Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's class is on the Nyaya philosophy of education, and this video is made on the request of some learners. You may let me know in the comment section if you have requested for this video. Also, you can type in the comment section any education related topic on which you would want me to take class. So before starting the class, if you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please subscribe now and press the bell icon to get notifications on all the new videos. So to start, Nyaya philosophy is one of the Indian philosophy. It is astika, which means that it is orthodox in its beliefs and practices. It is derived from Sanskrit word which means justice, judgment, rules or method. This philosophy started during the 2nd century BC. Gautama, who is also known as Aksapat, was the founder of this philosophy. Here Gautama is different from the Gautama Buddha, so please do not get confused here. This philosophy is based on 528 Nyaya Sutras. This basically means the ancient Indian Sanskrit text which was composed by Gautama. This text is divided into 5 adhyas, which means books, with 2 ahnikas meaning chapter. Now this philosophy is also known as Tattva Shastra, which means science of categories, Tarka Shastra, which means science of reasoning, Pramana Shastra, which refers to the science of correct knowledge, Hetu Vidya, which means the science of causes, Vadartha, which means the science of discussion, and Anviksiki, which means the science of inquiry. Now one thing we have to know is that this philosophy laid great emphasis on right knowledge, and the whole philosophy is based on it, which we will see in the upcoming slides. Now let us look at the metaphysics of this philosophy. Metaphysics means reality, and according to this philosophy, both soul and matter are real. This philosophy believes in Asad Karyavada, which means the non-existence of effect in cause. It do not believe in the pre-existence of effect in the cause. For example, a wooden chair is made out of wood, but it does not mean that the chair was already present in the wood even before the carpenter makes it into chair. Therefore, according to this philosophy, the effect did not exist in the material cause prior to its production. According to this philosophy, the individual souls are infinite in number. The physical world is made up of 4 physical substances, which are earth, water, fire and air. Ishvara, who is God, is the ultimate creator of the universe. Now, coming to epistemology. Epistemology means knowledge. And as I have said in the beginning, this philosophy laid great emphasis on knowledge. Knowledge, according to this philosophy, is not self-revealing. Hence, man must make continuous effort in obtaining the right knowledge. There are 12 prameya, meaning objects of knowledge, in this philosophy, which are Atma, which means individual self or soul, Sharir, which means body, Indriya, which refers to the senses, number 4, Arth, which means meaning, Gyan, which means knowledge, Man, which means mind, Pravritti, which refers to the tendency of an object, Dosh, which refers to the mental imperfections, Pretbhav, which is rebirth after death, Phal, which means result, Dukkha, which means sufferings, and Moksha, meaning liberation. Now coming to pramanas, which means sources of knowledge. There are both valid and invalid sources of knowledge. The invalid sources of knowledge, called aprama vidya, is of 4 types, which are obtained from smriti, which means memory, samsaya, which means doubt, brahm, which means error, and tarka, meaning logic. Next we have the valid source of knowledge, which are called the prama vidya, and they are Pratyaksha, which means perception, Anumana, which means inference, Upamana, which means comparison, and Shabda, which means testimony. The Nyaya philosophy considers Prama as valid and right source of knowledge. Also, knowledge according to them is not valid until it is proven. Now, let us understand Prama, the valid source of knowledge, one by one. In number 1, we have Pratyaksha, which means perception. This is basically the knowledge that is obtained through the association of mind, sense organs and objects. Perception is of 2 types. Lokika, which is ordinary, and Alokika, which is extraordinary perception. The ordinary perception is the direct interaction of senses with objects such as seeing, hearing, tasting, touching and smelling. It is of 2 types, internal and external. The internal perception are cognition, affection, pain, pleasure, etc. The external perception is basically the interaction of mind with the objects such as visual, auditory, etc. Next is alokik, the extraordinary perception. These are basically the perception that are obtained through extraordinary medium like intuition. The alokik perception is further subdivided into three, which are samanya lakshana. This is the perception of universals. For example, the universal concept of feminine inherent in all women. Next, janana lakshana. This is the perception through association. Here, objects are not directly presented to the sense organs, but we remember in memory due to our past experiences. For example, we all have touched and smelled roses. So when we see or think about roses, we know that it will have nice fragrance in it. Next is yojana perception. This is the intuitive perception of the past, present and future, and this kind of perception is possible only by liberated soul whom we call yogis. Now, there are two stages of perception. The first one is nirvikalpa, the indeterminate perception where there is uncertainty about the existence of things. It is basically the bare sensation of objects. And the second one is savikalpa, the determinate perception. It is when the perception is explicit and well defined. Here we can feel the perception and is representational in nature. Now, coming to the second source of valid knowledge, Anumana, which is called inference. This basically means reaching at a conclusion from one or more than one premises. The inference is of two types, Swarth Anumana, which means inference for oneself. Here, in this kind of inference, one does not necessarily need to follow formal procedure or at the most the last of the 5 steps of inference. The other one is Parat Anumana, which means inference for others. Here one follows all the 5 steps of inferences in order. Now let us look at step number 1, which is Pratyajana. For example, when one says there is fire on the hill. Number 2, Hetu, because there is smoke there. In the third step, one arrives at Udharana. Whenever there is smoke, there is fire. The fourth step is Upanaya. The hill has smoke that is pervaded by fire. So on the fifth step, one finally arrives at conclusion, which is called Nigamana. Therefore, there is fire on the hill. Now, coming on to the third source of valid knowledge, that is Upamana, which is called analogy or comparison. This is the knowledge that is obtained by retaining previous knowledge. It is basically the knowledge of resemblance and similarity. The knowledge obtained by comparing two objects, ideas or situations. For example, as blind as a bat, as busy as a bee. Next, the fourth source of valid knowledge, that is Shabda, which means testimony. This knowledge is basically a reliable statement of learned and trustworthy person and also the text of Vedas. Here, testimony reliable should be Drashtanta, which is perceptible. This means availability of evidence about testimony from persons, saints or texts. And Adrashtanta, which means imperceptible. This means the logical evidences given by scientists. Here, Shabda is of two types, Lokika and Vedika. Lokika is also called imperfect testimony. It is the words and writing of human beings, and since humans are prone to errors, it is called imperfect. Number 2, Vedika, which is called the perfect testimony. It is called perfect because it is the text of sacred Vedas, which are authentic and spoken by God. Now, let us look at the axiology of this philosophy. Axiology means values, and values according to this philosophy are to differentiate the soul's or the individual self from body, to attain liberation and free oneself from illusion, which is possible by obtaining right knowledge, to practice spirituality as this philosophy believes that God is the creator of this universe. Now, moving on to the fundamental principles of this philosophy. Number 1, ignorance is the cause of all sufferings. Sufferings can be ended by attaining moksha, which means liberation. Liberation is possible by obtaining right knowledge. Right knowledge is the knowledge of self. It is the situation when one knows that the spirit or the soul is distinct from the body. It is basically coming out of the delusion and understanding the true nature of soul, self, and reality. Self in this philosophy is innumerable. Also, according to this philosophy, only that knowledge is valid which can be proved. This philosophy do not believe in the existence of effect in the cause. God is the ultimate creator and destructor of the universe. Now, coming on to the aims of education. The aims of education according to the Nyaya philosophy are to develop logical thinking, to acquire reasoning skills, to acquire liberation, to end the pain and suffering, to know about self. And when we talk about self, it means the true self or soul, which is not the body. Next, curriculum. Curriculum must include subjects which helps in attaining knowledge related to liberation and about the teaching of Vedas. It must include theological subjects which teaches about the existence of God. It must also include science and mathematics so as to develop the logical thinking and reasoning skills in students. Next, methods of teaching. The methods of teaching in the Nyaya philosophy includes logical reasoning, observation, lecture method, recitation, discussion, and question-answer method. Next, role of teachers. So according to this philosophy, the role of teachers are to have mastery over subject matter, to develop problem-solving skills in students, to help the students in develop logical thinking, to help the students in acquiring true knowledge, and to attain liberation. Next, role of students. The role of students are to differentiate between the real self and body, to think logically, to solve the problems of life, to obtain right knowledge, and to attain liberation. Next, discipline. Now, this philosophy do not believe in the strict and the authoritative discipline imposed by somebody else. It rather believes in self-discipline and individual freedom. Now, coming to the last one, there is school. School, according to the Nyaya philosophy, is a place where the students learn self-discipline, a place where they learn the means of acquiring right knowledge. So that was all on Nyaya philosophy. I hope you liked the video. Please let me know in the comment section. Like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.